a lot of those boys who were in international duty and were 14 came back into the squad late, basically cut me 3 or 4 days. But interesting, I'd gone over for a trial with Hibernian and I hadn't told anyone. I think one of the biggest disappointments was I had to just put her there. If I hadn't been in that squad, I could have played with him.
Hello folks, thanks for tuning in for this interview. This is brought to you by 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄. 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄 are wearable devices that are for vulnerable people. All you have to do if you find someone in a vulnerable situation, tap the phone and you can call their next of kin. You can find out where they live. You can also find out other details like their medical condition and other important information. 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄 are waterproof and don't need batteries. They work with Apple and Android phones and you don't need to download an app to use them. Here, Kevin, thanks very much for joining the interview today. I really appreciate your time. Here, folks, we've got one of Antrim's top players. Over the last, I would say, you've been playing at least 20 years of senior football. Would that be right?
Yeah, probably
More?
Senior. Not as much as county, but yeah, I would have started playing 16. So I'm 34 now, so 18, 17 odd years.
First question I want to start by, Kevin, is a bit lighthearted. Who was the first person to give you, when you come onto the senior scene at club level and then senior scene at county level, who's the first boy to give you a good roasting?
In terms of a roasting, more in terms of looking at the name and realising there was a bit of quality there. We played 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄, I think it was 2002, possibly. I would have came off the bench. Mickey Culbert would have been the St. Gall's man at the time, and he started me first round against 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄, so it was a wee bit of a surprise for everyone. I always remember sort of getting a goal early on and becoming a bit lost, thinking not only have I got the game here, but I got a goal, and then the start of the second half, they put a man on me. And I was like, right, this will be a sub. Your mentality there, things are going okay. And I was like, this boy can move. This boy can play football. I found out, like, they ended up beating us that day by a point or two. The next year, we luckily got our revenge. But that year was very, he would have lost a lot of attacks with Ryan McCluskey. I think he had an injury. Obviously, a lot of people don't play for Fermanagh for years, but that was probably my first roasting, my first game for a half anyway.
And what about the county?
Well, I suppose with county and club, I always remember in those sort of years, 2006, playing against Andy Mallon of Armagh in a friendly actually, down at St. Gall's pitch. And I think Armagh would have won the under 21 All Ireland that year, and I wouldn't really know of them and played a bit anyway. And yeah, I think they called him the Greyhound for a reason for what they got.
Really?
It was very, very, very sharp. I was getting out in front, clearly in front of most balls, and I was realised he obviously went on and won All Ireland and had a great career. But I suppose when you're introduced like that to, that was playing with the club in a friendly. But I suppose over the years, in terms of the county names would stand out, would be the likes of Carl Lacey of Donegal. Would be a boy who was a very good player. Luckily, to get much change out of. So I just remember a player from Kildare, Emmet Bowden, early on was very good.
And see these days, you hear there's a lot of people saying, you should specialise in one sport early on. The 10,000-hour rule. What's your thoughts of giving advice to parents?
Yeah, well, I suppose my dad's a PE teacher. That's really started for me. My dad's a PE teacher, I'm a PE teacher, so I suppose it's a lot to do with your environment. I don't think there's any right way. I think I was lucky enough to be, obviously my dad was into sport, and it wasn't just Gaelic. Dad would have played Gaelic at a high level. So obviously that's naturally the way I was going. Wanted to sort of probably emulate him. But he was very much a sportsman. He played rugby for Rainey and Marfelt, and played a bit of soccer and stuff. And he was very much, always, my memories when we were young was always bringing sports equipment home from wherever he was teaching, because he would have subbed a lot that. His second business, so he would have subbed in different schools, coming back, playing a bit of squash. So for me and my brothers and sisters, there's 6 of us, so it was all very much, just anything, and obviously firmly focused on Gaelic. But I do think, that playing at least 3 or 4 sports will help ultimately with what you want to do in the long term. So for me, it really was sort of basketball, swimming. I swam a lot, soccer and Gaelic. And they were the 4 main ones that I went on really to compete at sort of schoolboy level. And then naturally getting towards 14, 15, it just really went sort of soccer and Gaelic, and just those 2 where I enjoyed the most. But I definitely think playing all 4, and well, not playing swimming, but obviously the swimming aspect would have given me a good sort of base endurance for the other 3.
Great. What type of swim were you doing? How often were you swimming?
I swam for Club Leander. Yes, I swam for Club Leander, which was very good. I think it was a friend of my dad's, Bobby Medine. I think I taught with him or went to uni with him, but just got us in. Actually, a lot of the sort of primary school friends who swam for Olympia. So I was sort of the one playing for St. Gall's, they were playing for the Bridgets. I swam for Leander. things like that. So it was. I always remember it was like Friday nights for 2 hours in the PEC there, and it was heavy enough. And I'd be getting up on Saturday morning playing soccer, so 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, and then playing McGillick on a Sunday. So in those days, you don't think, oh, I'm wrecked, but it probably was. Looking back, Monday, Tuesday, you're probably a bit more cranky, and really, like, you just had the swimming sort of had to go before. Obviously, those swimmers now are competing at Olympic level. You're talking 6 a.m. You're talking swimming 2-3 times a day with all the other stuff. So it naturally went.
Brilliant. So see, if you were giving advice to a young kid, you want to be a county footballer, you want to be a county football forward, great feet, great passer, great shooter. What do they need to be doing on the side? Like, do they need to be at the pitch once a week, twice a week? Because I know in basketball right now, there's kids getting 1,000 3-pointers up a day.
I would suggest the fundamentals of your sport, and in my own sport, I feel like it's catching,
Right.
it's kicking, it's shooting, and making sure. I think one of the things, I was lucky enough to play for my club county at a young age, just because my hands were right. Would be dropping too many balls, and feet were right. And when you're young, you have to just do more. You just have to enjoy the sport. And I think, thinking back to my young days, not only was it doing the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd still be going to mates and playing 2 touches for 4 hours, in the free time. And it's just touches of the ball. It really is touches of the ball. So one thing that I don't think I did enough was my left foot, and you talk about coaches now, coaching young men in America, basketball, left hand, right hand. It's the same now in terms of Gaelic and soccer. You have to work on all aspects. And, the big thing now, obviously, the youth of today is the WhatsApps and, the technology and having the discipline to go, right, well, I'm just going to spend an hour kicking off my left foot out the back, off my right foot, and the sort of stuff that people don't see. I think it is very important just to go through the gears as you'd like. But obviously, there's people who get better at different ages. Some people, obviously, at 16, 17, maybe haven't got on county minor squad, but then just start to see the bigger picture and start to develop their skills. So it's just really about getting touches of the ball in my aspect, because ultimately, if you get the senior and one aspect's lacking, it will let you down. And when you get the county level, senior county level, those are where the maybe small mistakes highlight. I always remember back in Galls, Mickey Gribbon, who was one of my first coaches, and he coached me for a lot of years, probably like under 4 or 5, right up until under 12s. And, he played a game in pretty much every training, no double takes, so basically we would be playing small matches, and he would blow even if you double hook it, you maybe still caught the ball. And it got to the stage that, when you're playing matches and you do a fumble, you still get the ball, you're nearly waiting on a whistle. So small things I think coaches can do, you can do yourself, whereby you're adding different measures into the situations, to get you better.
Brilliant. So, some of the greats out there, like famous Michael Jordan story, cut from his first year basketball team. What about yourself? Ever faced any rejection like that?
Yeah, not in Gaelic as much, not in Gaelic as much in terms of that. I suppose one of the biggest things, and I think certain friends will say I maybe still talk about today, but I got cut from a Milk Cup squad with football, and it's funny how your environment and different things happen. You can change your aspects, and obviously, I was saying previously, I was very much involved in soccer and Gaelic. And I suppose we developed a wee bit later. In terms of that Milk Cup squad, there was a lot of good players who weren't available at the start of the year. So Steve Davis, who you've probably heard of. And he was, listen, at that age group, I could see, I suppose I came in the draft squad, and I was like, who's this guy? I thought I was okay. And he was a different class. So a lot of those boys who were international duty and were 14 came back into the squad late, and there was only 18, 19 allowed to go. And obviously represent Antrim, and they basically cut me 3 or 4 days before we left. What turned out is I was playing a lot of Gaelic, playing a bit of soccer, and I had a bit of interest, and I'd gone over for a trial with Hibernian in Scotland, and I hadn't told anyone. Essentially, like Steve Davis, who was playing with Villa, then like Steve Davis, I think was signed with Villa 11 or 12. You had to represent your county, regardless if if Aston Villa were in the World Cup, you still had to. So Hibs were basically sent a team to the World Cup, and I went over and played a match. And I was playing for Rosario at the time, and I'd selected. So I think one of the biggest disappointments was I had just been cut earlier. If I hadn't made that squad, I could have played with Hibs. And I think that really was one of the things in terms of football where things started going really well in terms of the club, as I said, and it was like just sort of put that in the back burner, and that was probably for me at the time. Yeah, even now, just one of the biggest disappointments, just the series of events. Because I remember coming back to pre-season Rosario, and the chairman, he brought me over for the trial and stuff, and a few others from the man, saying, "Oh, how'd the World Cup go?" And I was like, "Did you not hear?" Because I was away playing Gaelic all summer and stuff, and just trying to probably up Port Rush most of the summer. And basically, yeah, he came back and he took sure the boys were on for Hibs, and I was like, you know what, forget about it. And yeah, I suppose experience. I was meant to go for a trial for Wolves for a week, the next year, and I didn't go. I went to the Gaeltacht instead. So there's different things like that whereby you get knockbacks, and I suppose it can drive you in another aspect. But I've always liked football, and I still play a bit.
Like, see, I just want to get like real specific. Like, you've just been cut. You get the phone call. You're cut. Like, were you cut over the phone, or was it in person, or?
You know what? No, it was in person. It was after like a wee tournament, right at the very end, and it was sort of like I was playing centre midfield throughout the games in the league and stuff before some of the internationals came back. And then they sort of got in, and you sort of knew yourself. It never really dawned on me. I was thinking, right, okay, I'll still be in the squad, but I might be on the bench because Steve Davis is alright, sort of thing. And then it was just after a tournament, one of the coaches was a bit gut-wrenching the fact that, yeah, he pulled you to the side. I remember it was a real sunny day, and funny, I remember, only remember it now thinking about it, getting in the back of a car and just being quiet, just going, what is going on here? And I always remember, I don't even know who the keeper was. He probably played football at this level now, but he had just got a trial for Wolves that year before. So the coach was telling him that, and he was over the moon because he was winning the World Cup, and I was sitting in the back going, oh no, this is bad. So yeah.
No, so sometimes people would F and blind the coach if something happens. You just said, no, I'm going to use this energy. And
yeah, there's no point. I suppose there's no point. Maybe I didn't react to it the right way. Not to put the finger up to football in that sense, but I love Gaelic, and with the club mentality, you go back to some calls. That's what picks you up. Boys aren't mentioning it, and that's the thing whereby there was always this gap. You go into a football changing room, yourself going to the basketball changing room. They're all different, not that the soccer changing room is bad, but it's just a different culture, a different mentality. And I suppose I went back to my family, which was some calls, and just said, you know what, it's easy to forget about it. If I was just football, it probably would have affected me a lot more, than it did. So yeah, thinking back to that, maybe I didn't react to it.
I suppose there's a lesson there, like that argument of should a kid focus on one sport only, or should they dabble in different sports? There's an example of how it's good to play two sports, and from what I see, it seems that Gaelic and soccer really complement each other.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of even with the way Gaelic's gone now, and it's turned a wee bit more like basketball. If you can still accurately kick pass, you still need to have that sort of both feet. And, it can cut out a sweeper, it can cut out men getting back into a blanket defence if you have that. But you said earlier about your confidence to use left and right. Yes, your confidence does have to be a level whereby you see small gaps and you still go for it. And that's, I suppose, in terms of decision making for young people, where it can come wrong, because sometimes you can back your skill set when it's not completely there, and you can give away a lot of ball. And yourself, Peter, in this day and age, different from where we're talking about them. There's no hiding places. The stat man's there, the video analysis there. In those days we're talking about, it's just your memories. And you having your own individual goals of
And you talk about goal setting, and a lot of the top players that I've been speaking to, they're writing down. They're actually physically writing down goals. It's not just in their head. An idea. Would you be one for diaries, reflecting on performances, like physically writing it down or typing it in your phone, things like that?
A bit of both, to be honest. Reading Paul O'Connell's book, and very interesting story about the goals he set, and wrote them down and went on to achieve them really quickly. I think Richie McCall was the same. If you look at top level rugby, I suppose you don't think you're goal setting when you're a kid. I always remember sitting in school, maybe in GCSE year, and writing I can't exactly remember. It was Antrim All-Ireland champions 20. I know
21.
I'm trying to think now. That was 0203, so I was giving myself 10 years. 20. So I think it was about 2018 sort of thing. Right. Yeah, 2017. I think the 28. So I always remember writing that in a book. probably not doing the work shooter and sitting down and sort of writing down a team. I remember I would have known sort of what was going on in terms of under 21 scene, like who Dermot, his same older brothers, and those sorts of boys, and Barry, and who was good at that level, and thinking, well, this could be, a team that, could go and win it, and this would be the year. And obviously we didn't go on to achieve it, but we did quite well, especially in 2009, that squad. And, it's important. It's important to go. I never wrote down. Obviously, the Iron Club never hands to be wrote down, but you didn't need to. That was always what you were chasing. But I think it is very important to go and set and reflect on your performance. Especially at a young age. It is important to realise that you're not the finished player yet. Even if you think you're good, if you might be, you're not, and really acknowledge that. Some kids think, well, I've done it. I'm doing this at my level, and then the step up. So it's more in terms of long term goal setting. It's very important what you want to achieve. And you find, as you say, I maybe didn't do as much as some of the people you read about, but I think the Richie McCaw and Paul O'Connell story in terms of actually the goal setting for it to be the top 3 players in the world. At one point, and he's sitting writing this down. Paul O'Connell was sitting writing this down, working as a bouncer at 19 years old, down in Limerick somewhere. So within 3 or 4 years, he really went through the gears there, and worked for him. But it definitely, if it's a massive goal like that, or just something, it just keeps your eyes on the prize, and it makes you think, right, well, am I doing enough? Or the guilt will kick in if you're maybe doing something like an either not do, or maybe something not to. So, am I really going to achieve what I said, or am I sort of kidding myself? So, yeah, I'd be a firm believer on it. And I suppose in terms of reflecting on games, I don't like to do a post-mortem straight away. Sometimes it can just, frustrate you. It's just, I suppose, tough losses. Like the 06 All-Ireland final. I've never watched the game. It's one of those ones that it's at the end, and you're just like, you know what, that was a bad day. The next year is in the year, so I haven't gone through that. I maybe watch it someday, but I wouldn't be a big man reflecting that, especially at the end of the year. But I know some people who get really into it and find it beneficial. But no, I just try to sort of worry about myself. But it's small things for me. I played a match last week there against some of my former students that I taught and coached against the Pandas. And anyway, we sort of fell apart later on, and when I was reflecting on that game, I dropped the ball on the byline in the 45. It's wee small things like that you think, I can't do that again. And that's the sort of thing that we reflect on your performance. But you have to realise, especially if you're doing things wrong, why to do it wrong. Sit down and just try.
We're just going to. I just want to dive in for a bit for the people out there who watch into the culture of teams. So everyone remembers some goals. Like, I'm sorry, how many championships have you got there just in the recent years? How much do you have roughly?
I've 12. 13 more recently in general. So we started in 01, based on 06, and then that ran up to 4 or 5 years ago. But that was 06. So that was maybe year 3 or year 4 in terms of winning county titles, and it was a competitive squad. Like that team, 7-6 I think it finished. One of the coolest Olympics day ever. Salt Hill, very good players, Michael Donlan. These sorts of very good players. So we always knew it was going to be tough. Like, we beat Nemo, played a cousin of mine who played for Nemo. We beat Nemo in a semi, and I think that's when we beat Balahi in the Ulster final that year. And John Rafferty was with us, and he still had belief in us that we could go all the way. And I suppose you still have regret that you didn't really do it, even for the likes of him. We put so much time and effort into that team, made the whole squad, because you look from 06 to 2010, it was a core group, but there's a lot of just looking at faces there. There's a few boys like the Dragons here. He's going to kill people. Look at Dragons down the bottom right. But those boys would have sort of faded away between 2010 and are still great supporters. So you talk about a culture of that, but those jerseys are shocking too. Look at those sleeves.
But no, it's sorry, just like as an massive Antrim fan myself, I don't know. Maybe that's nothing to do with it. But we never seen Antrim on TV growing up. We had that brilliant run with where we gave Derry a run and we beat Down in the first round. Way back, that was magical, and you didn't really see much Antrim on TV. So, how come you wore the yellow tops? Like, was that something to do with? Was that something to do with the staff?
County, they would go. I always remember, if you look at them, Yeah, that was Galway colours, not Antrim colours.
Yeah.
So I think it was a kit clash. So it was just the fact that kids clashed a bit, so we went county. I think they used to do that. I know against the Blahy, sorry, that same year, we wore Antrim jerseys in the Ulster final. We actually wore the Antrim crest on it. So I think that was it. But yeah, my issue with that day was with the big, massive Gaelic ear sleeves.
I know.
But I was nearly cutting them off Trevor Dale style before the game. So yeah, but no, that's I think what happened. That was the Galway colours. You know, they had a very good team. The likes of Finney and Hanley went on and played for Galway and full back that day. So I'm sure they were due one. But yeah, it's definitely one that got away.
Who was marking you that day?
I don't.
Well, how did you find it?
I think Finney. Well, my memories that day, as I said, I didn't watch it back, but definitely didn't have could have had better games. We all probably could have had better games. But it was just so hard around in Croke Park. Plus the wind, it was so hard to judge not only the ball coming into you, but maybe especially as an 18, 19-year-old having the confidence to kick it. Burns he'd missed a few frees and you just knew it was a difficult free. So yeah, we probably caught a bit cold, and you know, you have to look back and say that day helped us a lot in terms of what came later. You know, but some definitely great memories that whole year. You know, you still have to look back and still call it the fact he's won the Ulster and beat a very high-profile Nemo team in a semi-final.
What's said in the changing room after losing an All-Ireland final? Who says it? Nothing said.
Yeah, very little said. Just pure depression. Pure depression. Yeah, that was the first time I realised the players' lounge. A lot of boys obviously wouldn't have drank. Yeah. You know, I knew it was 18, 18 to start to take a few drinks, and there was obviously a lot of boys hadn't done. So it was just more that sort of taking a few beers and not really feeling it, but sort of thinking what else is for it. Yeah, so I remember the players' lounge. That was the big novelty in those days. You were actually in Croke Park players' lounge, and you didn't have to pay for anything. So that was a small bonus. But it's difficult. They came in after us later on, the Salt Hill teams and their nice cream chinos and their wee fancy some boys in Galway probably kitted them out in the nice gear, and we were sitting in our just tracksuits already ready to get on the bus, and they were over the moon, and we were just ready to go on the bus. But again, you go up the road and you go to the club and you try and get over it. But yeah,
great answer. So here, my favourite photo here I found was this one in the right hand corner. Can you see it?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, that's obviously the final whistle. So what else to do was just throw the hands up.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, great feeling. Definitely good feeling with especially what had happened 4 years previous. But yeah, and just it was so different. We got a lot of more years under the belt, and you know, I think Kilmacud, probably looking back, maybe a bit like ourselves that year. You know, the first time in Croke Park, probably didn't play to the standards they obviously were playing to. You know, much of the year previous, coming out of Munster and beating Port Leash in the semi-final. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for sort of losing it once. But no, it's just great memories.
So see, for players out there, young and older, what's your pre-match routine, and does it change for an All-Ireland final?
Probably a funny story, but that's actually involving a friend, Sean Burke, I can bring in here. But no, mine doesn't. As I said, I would scramble eggs week, and mine would be trying to just get enough sleep, trying to eat plenty of pasta. Maybe I'd try and start 2 days, start slacking off maybe a day before, and just sort of top up in terms of what you're eating, and just plenty of rest. Obviously, plenty of water, doing what you have to do in terms of massages, ice baths. I would always, quite often, sometimes before, but definitely after matches, get an ice bath of some description, put on my recovery tights. So those are sort of psychological aspects you get involved over the years, and they can develop. Like, my recovery skins that I wear even now, probably wouldn't in those 6 years, I definitely wouldn't have been wearing them. And it's something you maybe pick up over the years, and you keep it as part of sort of religiously what you do. So no, mine doesn't change too much in terms of what I eat. The sleep I try and get, but I do try and get a routine. But at the same time, some things can knock you off. Things go up, things happen. The day at matches, family emergencies. You try not to sort of be completely overtaken by it. But I definitely think the routine, those sorts of things. But I was saying about that morning, it's St. Patrick's Day in 2010. Sean Burke and around to my mum's house, and I didn't eat. Burke lands and mum was making a food fry for like the family going down. So like sausages, bacon, like smelling it upstairs. I'm going nowhere near that. Obviously, we're going to Ireland final today. and turkey lads, and Mum's like, Sean, do you want sausages? Do you want bacon? And I'm like, Mum, what are you doing? Don't even joke about that sort of thing. Like, he's not eating anything like that. And he's like, fellas, give us that there. Brown sauce, please. 2 sausages and about 30 soda or something like. But Berkeley had a great game that day, so just it goes to prove that it does, and people are into different things. I remember always going down to Kilmacud and religiously. I didn't really do it, but Kieran McGordy would be another example. If they stopped in the old Five Ways, a lot of boys remember, and just get the full soda, fried soda, things like that. But probably stayed in good stead for most of the day. But yeah, each to their own. But no, I tend to try and keep relatively the same thing, and I think that just comes with peace of mind because going into a game, you're well refreshed, there's no real excuses, and you just go out and perform.
And like the national calls team, big personalities. Be quite vocal yourself. Half time. When do you know it's the right time to speak up and when's not the right time to speak up?
It knows earlier that Mickey Colbert, when you have a personality or John Rafferty in a room at a half time, you don't speak. You let them speak. First, some of the older boys maybe want to word, but definitely something to change room. Sometimes too many people speak. For me, probably the best example would be like Mark McCrory. Talk to Sean Kelly. Mark McCrory would have been someone who, in St. Paul's, very smart fella, very good footballer, very good career all around, played for Antrim, played for Armagh, and didn't speak too much, but when he spoke, that's when you Lamsey's speaking, so we'll listen to this, and different personalities do different things. Sometimes, that when someone's speaking to them, the other time people say too much and say talk all the time, it nearly can become a bit redundant, it can be a bit of noise. So I think in terms of talkers, it needs to be a good balance. At times, managers will be different because managers, I'm speaking, you can discuss yourself. But I think that's maybe where a lot of sports teams getting a lot more player input into what's going wrong and things going wrong. There's maybe lower voices, but leadership happens in a lot of different ways. For me, on the pitch, I think a massive leadership factor, especially in my own position in the club, is you talk about coaching young players through it. Whereby if you have the ball, you can't see everything around you. I know Kieran McGordy in my club is a great man for telling me sort of when to go myself, before I even looked up, because, as I say, he's coaching me through it. So, like Kieran wouldn't have been too noisy in the change room, like another good speaker, but he would have done it on the pitch more so than at half time. And, I suppose you can show leadership in a lot of different ways. It's not just about who says the most, it's when it's said, it's why it's said, and if certainly managers, you say, need to show their roar at times, holding things back and going, right, he means business here, we need to buck up here. So, those are the things. But you did have a lot of good personalities. But again, I think the main thing is you have to have trust in your teammates, and that's something we did. Then, regardless of playing, you have to trust that they're going to get in front of the ball, and if you're playing inside, you have to trust they're going to get, kick pass or hand pass accurately to you. So I think that's sort of how we found our leadership. But Mickey Colbert was obviously a great speaker, and at half times, it was a chance for us to get a breather, and for him just to say what he wanted to change or what he wanted kept going.
Magic. So I'm going to dabble, I'm just conscious of your time. I just want to touch on your Antrim career, because you were like a massive part of bringing so much pride back into the Antrim jersey. Tell me about the work ethic in that Antrim team that pushed on for an Ulster final.
Yeah, we talked a lot about some goals, but when you think about Antrim and what we did there, I suppose you had a lot of players hitting a certain age profile that fitted in. It's hard to pick out the best. Obviously the next up in the forward line, you had great names like Paddy Cunningham, Mick McCann, Conor Murray coming through, and you had that, as I say, those age profile where you had maybe boys a few years older who were starting to find their feet and realise, right, it's up to us now, and showing that leadership quality. Whereby Kevin Brady was still there, who was obviously one of Antrim's best players and a great role model for me growing up and watching him. He's talking about what he did against Derry in those days, but I think you had that, and you had it backed up by a younger group in there, like Sean Burke, who came in that year and was very good, and the age profile, really fitted. You have to count top that we had a very good manager in Liam Bradley, who is what fitted for us then. There's no doubt about it. Cut out all that, for want of a better phrase, bullshit, at times. And listen, it was, you have to put it in, you have to work hard, and you have to maybe be a wee bit nastier than you've been. You had a very good trainer in Conway, and they were just a good squad. Some of the best. We had a good balance. You talk about the likes of Mick and Thomas, they're different players, but they complement each other well. At the back, we were definitely like Colin Brady, like Andy McLean, along with the best of Corgan and St John's and that. I got about you talk about Kevin O'Boyle and Sean McVeigh and all those boys, whether they featured much in that year or the years to come, we had a lot of sort of quality players coming from not only bigger, historically bigger clubs, but a lot of different clubs, and just creating a very strong panel whereby you knew that if you weren't on it, you'd lose your place, and if you weren't stepping up, you were going to be backed up with someone who was quality. I know like that Ulster fine then Alexa came close was very, unlucky to lose the spot, came on and scored a point, things like that. So, it was getting a balance between those older players who've been about, maybe had a few harder times with boys who came in and had a bit of confidence and had that bit of quality to create a good squad.
What advice would you give? Like, you were, at the time, you'd an All-Ireland medal in the back pocket, countless championships, countless Kilmacud's, and you've probably been dropped for one of the biggest games in your career, or dropped, but you weren't starting. I'm not too sure why. Was it an injury or that, or?
Yeah, was strange. Well, probably too long story, but 9-10 was a strange year. Ulster against Cavan, Gales. First 10-15 minutes, big fella Darren Rabbit from Cavan, big lump of a man came out through the back of me, snapped ligaments in the ankle. Was about, probably a long story, should have got an operation, didn't really go back, paid for some years at the time, sort of strapped up. I'd opted out Antrim that year completely. The Baker rang me a few times. I was just like, you know what, I have to get this off. It was too late then for the operation. GA insurance, again, a long story short, but it just so happened that I came in probably, we're not playing much football since November, and it was just, I'm grateful for Baker to convince me to come back and play, and the fact that I came in just before the Donegal game and he gave me minutes, it would have put boys' noses at a joint, I know it, and you can trust the fact that the boys there was playing through the league. So for me, in terms of that year, I was just happy to come in and experience it and get any minutes, and I'm just grateful to Baker for that, because it just shows, you say you're an important player in that. Didn't have much of an input, and the boys, got their name off of good performances. Kevin O'Boyle against Donegal stands out, things like that. So being able to, get the Ulster final, be on that squad and play against Kerry, and lucky enough to start against Kerry. It was just, I was grateful just to sort of get a second chance. So hindsight, that was 09. So that was for me. It was 010 that we won the All Ireland the year after.
Sorry, yeah.
So it carried on. So we won the All Ireland then St Patrick's Day, 8-9 months later. So I won it with still not getting the operation. And that's the things you just have to look back and go, yes, maybe wasn't making the best decisions in some ways, but if I had got the operation, I could have missed out on that and potentially in All Ireland. So that was a great couple of years, for that.
You've played with some great players over the years. Who do you think was the hardest trainers out there, and what did you take from them?
Yeah, probably the hardest trainer, a lot of the boys would agree. In terms of the club, would be Sean Kelly. In terms of mentality, just keeping himself right from a very young age, training hard, playing for Antrim at 18-19, and just being dedicated to the sport. For someone who was maybe small enough build to work on the physical side of things and always have the fitness side of things to develop into a good player. Probably in terms of the county scene, players I've played with, as you said, there's a lot of everyone. If you play county football, everyone has to have a certain level of work with. The likes of James Lockley, who's playing with Cork now. Really don't want to mention Lockley because he's getting mentioned these days, and I guess. But to be fair, Lockley was a bit of a freak. He was always an athlete. He took the game like a wee bit later. It just showed you as he had a basketball background. Obviously, he went through the gears at a very quick level to get to the level he did at. But in terms of working hard and the stamina, everyone says about Lockley, he was so quick and sharp. But that was stuff that you didn't see, stuff behind the scenes, stuff probably at the Stratford Park or wherever he was living. Where he was doing his sprints, and that's standard. Like I said, we see what he's doing now. You not just talk about the early years; it's the longevity of your career, and to be able to perform at that level into your 30s, and that's something probably he has definitely had. But a lot of great workers in the county, Mark Sweeney, Snowy. Like Snowy's a great example, and so I know you're talking to later. My memories of Snowy even underage. Snowy will be chat to us about like getting a couple of feeling very unlucky that he got cut for a starting team in championship. Remember Sean Ward, who went on and had a great soccer career with Glentoran and Field Crusaders still going, came in last minute and he wiped his eye. Now I could be wrong on that, but the likes of Sean, who worked hard, physically just became, a specimen. and didn't really see talk about motivating factors. Maybe I didn't react it. He obviously reacted in the right way, and he made his impact when he got to senior level. So you look back at boys' careers, it doesn't matter. Essentially, it matters, but he'll always remember not starting that day. Yeah. But at the same time, it's how he used it. So you've great workers like that. Those would be some of the best.
Magic. And then sort of the best. Who would you say be the sort of best 3 players played with? Not in any order. It's a tough question.
Sean would have to be in there. Sean Kelly would have to be as one of the players that played with. Maybe not 3 like with the club. Sean and CJ is obviously one of the most talented players about the county. It would have to be the likes of McCann, but and boys like that. But I suppose I was lucky enough to play in a couple of sort of Ulster teams or World Cup teams, and played with likes of Michael Murphy, Sean Kavanagh, Conor McManus, and these boys here at the very, very top level. I was lucky enough just to play a couple of games. So in terms of longevity, you have to, with the county and club, it would have to be those names I mentioned at the start. All extremely good players. What
advice, Kevin, would you give to kids these days when it comes to social media, both in terms of...
Yeah, it's just getting the balance right. Obviously, there's a lot of pluses to social media, self-promotion, keeping an eye on things, but at the same time, it can be a bit fake at times, and you can maybe put a bit too much emphasis on getting likes, getting retweets, and thinking and placing probably sometimes your worth in what's going on online as opposed to in the real world. So I think if I was giving any advice with these social media, it's a very, very important aspect. But going back, you have to have the self-discipline to realise I'm going to leave the phone down for an hour or two. I'm going to just have my family meal and not pick it up and maybe do my homework or go and practice some skills, and then I'll do a bit of social media, I'll do whatever. But it's I suppose when you're waiting for that ding in the phone to go and you're sort of wasting time in between, is something you don't want to get into the habit of doing. And I think even WhatsApp groups, to be honest, is one of the big things. I find for me now, you can get caught up in 15 or 20, and it's tough because you're coming back and you're trying to get caught up, and you're trying to. You always see those people who are always involved in different WhatsApp groups, and you're starting to think, do you ever put the phone down? So it's important to realise you can't live your life on social media. It definitely can make you do it, but again, just have to be right.
Magic Ned here. Thanks a million for your time. Take care.
No problem. Thank you. Cheers.
I hope you or a family member or a friend can take some tips from this interview. And if you'd like to support the interview series, we'd love you to head over and check our new product called 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄. These are wearable devices to help ensure the safety of a loved one if they're ever found in a vulnerable position. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Looking forward to showing you the next interview.